Well, yeah, a bit of change of look here. You might be wondering what's going on. Look, I kind of build this as a microgrid for preppers, just a bit of tongue-in-cheek, really, because prepping is about preparing for the unexpected, for things that go wrong. And frankly, life off-grid can be like that. If you're reliant on electricity, which just about everyone is, you know how essential it is to all the things that happen in your life. There's this thing called the Maslow hierarchy of needs. I don't know if you've studied psychology, but it's about, basically a pyramid, and at the bottom of the pyramid are the most important things. You could say air. For life, right? You've got to have air. You can't live a few minutes without it. On top of that might be water. You need to drink water. Then comes food. And then you start to get things like shelter from the environments. It includes thermal comfort. Then you've got things like feel-good stuff like friends, socialization. And at the top is complete self-actualization. Pretty weird, eh? But if you turn off the electricity to an off-grid home, that pyramid collapses down to sort of basically air. Yeah, that's right. You've got no power. You've probably got pressure pumps that run your water. So you've got no water. You can't flush the toilet. You've got to go out and fill a bucket. You've probably got no thermal comfort because your cooling fans are gone, or your circulating system, if you've got hydronics, is gone. Certainly can't have any heaters or hot water. And suddenly none of your friends come around anymore. So yeah, electricity is pretty fundamental. And that's why I kind of build this as a bit of a thing. It's about preparing for a reliable energy transformation, a reliable energy system if you're off grid. I will kind of talk a little bit about microgrids that are grid connected as well. I'll get onto that in a bit. But anyway, I'd just like to welcome everyone, and please let me know where you're watching this from in the chat. Love to sort of feel the interaction with my audience. So yeah, throw that into the chat, say hi. And as always, please ask questions. So put some questions in there, or even just some comments. It's just nice to know there's a live audience out there. I think at the moment, all 10 of you. Yeah, as you probably know, I'd also release this on other channels afterwards. And also it's saved automatically to my Smart Energy Lab YouTube channel. So if you miss the live or you have to go away, you can watch it. Now, what's a little bit different about this show today is normally it's completely live, but what I thought I wanted to do is show you a real microgrid system, and the one here at the Smart Energy Lab. So I went about and did a little selfie camera, walked around and filmed various aspects of it. And I'm going to play that to you in a bit. So it's really a sit back and watch kind of thing. It does run for like 24 minutes, I think. So it's going to be the bulk of this show. But then at the end of that, and hopefully you'll have lots of questions, I'll come back and carry on with the live. But it'll be a bit more real than just me waving my arms around and saying, this is what you need to do. Okay? So that's the plan. Oh, g'day Colin from Romsey, Victoria, and Martin from Bellevue, Western Australia. Great to have some WA people there with your 3-hour time difference. So yeah, you're watching it in the morning, and the Kiwis are watching it in the late afternoon. And anyone who's overseas, let me know how far away you are. Got anyone from South Africa there? Because I'm going to be in South Africa soon, doing a bit of a tour of technical talks. So yeah, if you happen to be in Johannesburg or Cape Town in a couple of weeks, come and say hi. So let me just once again talk about some of the things you should be aware of, particularly if you're in the industry, in the solar and battery industry. And one of those things is, of course, the Smart Energy Council's Smart Installer Program. It's a really great program. And it gives you access to both continuous professional development points, which installers need to maintain their accreditation with SAA. It also gives you access to some of the really important safety standards. So 4777 Part 1 is included for free now, but if you want the whole pack of, I think it's 9 Australian New Zealand standards, it's another $99. So there you go. And by the way, that's an absolute bargain. When you think about what the cost is, certainly in Australia from SAO Global, that's a fraction of the price. The other things that are happening is a couple of road shows. So road shows from the Smart Installer Roadshow, which will be in Canberra on February the 11th and Brisbane on February the 13th, Melbourne February the 18th and Adelaide on February the 20th. With the indomitable Jeff Bragg. He's great. So Jeff is a really experienced installer, inspector, and runs the Smart Installer Roadshows. That's fantastic. Of course, in terms of the Smart Energy Council, they have an expo every year. So if I go back to there we go. Expo in 2025 is in Sydney, and it's a huge event. So it's on the 9th and 10th of April. At the ICC Sydney, and yeah, really great. It's free to go. I learn a lot. I always go there, and I make quite a bit of content while I'm there. On the subject of road shows, we've got solar cutters, of course. Solar cutters everywhere. Wow. Just check out that list there. Bendigo, Hobart, Penrith, Melbourne, Cairns, Newcastle, Byron Bay, Adelaide, Geelong, Canberra, Townsville, Perth, Brisbane and Albury, all over the shop. And that's from all through the year, from April through to October, the road shows from the Smart Energy, from Solar Cutters. G'day, Scotty from Pakenham. Not far away. I could almost throw a stone. There we go. So that's a little bit of trivia news. Not what news, but what events are coming up. Now, what else? So I'm going to talk a bit about microgrids. Now, I have actually previously run a course on microgrids, and hang on, let me just try and find my. Where is my thing gone? I need number 6. That must be it there. Okay. And I'm sorry, just getting the right screens up for me. That'll be D. There we go. So I have previously run a course online on microgrid design. It was a 2-day course. I think it was early last year. It turned out to be the most popular course I've ever run. Amazing. I had huge attendance. So I realized a lot of you are really interested in microgrids. Now, I'm not going to do that course now. That course was basically, 6 hours of me talking over 2 days. But I'm just going to use a few slides from it to kind of highlight where we're headed. Okay, so I live on a microgrid. In fact, I built this microgrid, and I'm going to tell you a bit about how I accidentally built it. True story. And we're at the Murramurra Co-op, which is one of the oldest intentional communities in Australia. Intentional meaning we intended to live together. It's not a religious community. It's not a special purpose community. Basically, we cohabit on one piece of land and we work together to manage it. And what you're looking at there is a really cold, frosty winter's morning at Murramurra Co-op. And in the back there, that cluster of houses is the microgrid of my cluster, Wombat Hollow. There's actually 30 homes here, and in Wombat Hollow there's 7, and they're all on a microgrid. But it's much more than that. And in the foreground, you can see our horticultural area where we grow a lot of food. We're not a bunch of hippies. We're kind of pretty conventional. There's a little group shot from some years ago. That's me teaching online. And as you know, I have a channel called the Smart Energy Lab, but you may not know, and I'd love you to subscribe to this other one. It's called Everything Off Grid. Now, I started this quite a few years ago, got a little bit distracted in the interim. I did a lot of it during COVID. I'll get back to making more content for this, but it's more about living off grid as opposed to tech. There will be a little bit of tech in amongst it, but it's about living off grid. So, everything off grid. I'd love to get a few more subs on that one. I'll try and bring in some more content about living off grid. So let's get on to, who's that dude? Oh, that's DJ Glenmo. I forgot about him. Let's talk a bit about microgrid systems and what are the reasons for designing a microgrid, what are the benefits, and what are the key components. So let's start real simple and talk about how these components can interact. So I said real simple. Yep, there's my primary school drawing of a grid-connected system, and we've got a power pole, we've got a house with solar and batteries, and a kind of smoky chimney, and a shed out the back. And it's got solar on it as well. Now, a microgrid can be connected to a utility grid, or it can be what I call an island microgrid or islanded microgrid, meaning there is no utility network connected. But the concept of microgrid is basically you've got multiple sources that are connected together. And in the simplest sense, this arrangement is a very, very tiny microgrid. We've got a shed with solar and inverter. It supplies a submain, and that submain feeds the main house, and the main house has its own solar and battery, and they work together. So there is effectively a little grid there, and it may even be islandable, meaning if the grid fails, those two systems keep on working. But really the benefits of a microgrid start to kick in when you've got a bit more going on. And so let's say you have a few houses. Here we've got one house with just solar and one house with solar and batteries, and a common grid forming system. Now the grid forming system is in that shed, and it's got a big battery and some solar. And it's also connected to the utility grid. So that's sort of an optional extra in terms of the definition of microgrids. Why would you have this kind of arrangement? Well, you might want to be able to benefit from house at the top there gets the sun in the morning, and the house at the bottom gets the sun in the afternoon. And so they can kind of share their surplus about through that microgrid system. They're all connected in parallel on the AC network. Those brown lines are the AC cables. So yeah, it's a sharing of energy system. And the main grid forming system, I'm calling it, it's grid forming whenever the utility grid fails. It steps in and creates a stable 50 hertz 230 volt grid, and those houses stay online. So it gives them a kind of backup as well. Yes, now if you go off grid, you just take away the power pole and replace it with a generating set. So there you go. That's the difference between a islanded microgrid and a grid connected microgrid. Now it gets more interesting when you throw in a few more items into the mix, and so maybe some controlled loads. Here I'm showing a hot water service that provides, I don't know, hot water for something else. Might not be even one of the houses, who knows. So that's a controlled load. The reason having controlled loads is great for islanded microgrids is you've got nowhere to spill the surplus solar once all the battery systems are full and all the loads are met. So having a discretionary load that's not time critical, like you don't want your lights to go on and off whenever there's too much or not enough power. Rather, you'd like to dump some of that surplus energy into a stored energy system such as hot water. It could even be cooling, it could be hot water, it could be pumping water, it could be a hydronic system, anything that's not sort of time critical. Oh, swimming pools, of course. Yeah, they're all good applications for non-critical loads that you can dump power into. Oh, g'day, Romy from Sydney. Hi, Romy. Good to have you on board. Okay, so there's a problem once we've got this kind of configuration, and the problem is that when those batteries are full, let's say the grid forming system in the middle there is full, and the two houses, their battery, or one house has batteries, it's full, and the hot water service is completely heated up to maximum. Now, the sun's still out, and so we've still got generation. We need to curtail that generation. And unfortunately, we can't send it back to the generating set and turn it back to diesel. So we need to have some way of ramping down the solar generation when there's nowhere for the energy to go. Now, fortunately, there's a very easy way of doing it, and it's built into the specification of every inverter that complies with the grid test standard ASN/ZS 4777.2. So 4777.2, all versions, including the latest 2020, have this feature, and it's what's known as the frequency power response mode. So all inverters, when they see the frequency of their supply, because inverters which parallel with another network are called supplementary these days, supplementary supply, are basically responding to the frequency of the supply. And if the supply is the utility grid, it's not going to change much at all. But once you're islanded and you've got a grid forming inverter, that big one in the shed, it can actually raise the frequency whenever it doesn't need any more input to charge batteries. And so it will be the signal as frequency goes up, all of the solar inverters will start to ramp down in a linear fashion from 100% of their output rating to 0%, and it goes up and down. So that frequency ramping actually makes for very easy control within some limits. And so the other one is to have controlled loads that can do the same thing. Now, this is a bit special, and it really is probably mostly going to be resistive elements, because you can't ramp up and down slowly things like compressors, swimming pool pumps, etc. They are on or are off, but a resistive load like a hot water service can take a little bit of power or a lot of power or somewhere in between. And so there are a range of products that do this. They do frequency response mode, and they ramp up and down in response to the change in the microgrid frequency. So effectively, they're helping keep the solar running by consuming some of that surplus power. So that's pretty cool. And g'day, Charles from Waiheke. Good to have you on board. Enjoy all the email chats between you and me. I should remind people that you can put questions in the chat, but you can also email them to me. I'm just going to put my email address in there because I love questions, and they often are the source of future Toolbox Tech Talks like this one. This one actually is the result of questions from a viewer. So thank you. All right, so what I'm going to do now is take you on a little tour of my microgrids. And like I said, this is a pre-recorded piece, and if I can get this going right, see if I can plug it in there. And yeah, so you can sit back and enjoy, and I'll come back at the end of this. G'day, it's Prepper Glenmo here. Yeah, you can tell by the bandana. I thought I'd take you on a bit of a history tour of how I built my accidental microgrid here at the Smart Energy Lab. And it all started about 10 years ago, thanks to a few very kind companies who donated some products for my students to train on. So let's go and check them out. So check out the whiteboard behind me. This is our little mud map of the microgrid as it currently stands. There's something like about 20 plus inverter systems at any one time. They change from time to time on the microgrid here. There's 7 homes. There's 8 EVSEs, commonly called EV chargers. There's 2 DC fast chargers. There's a small solar farm, 76 kilowatts, soon to be upgraded. And there's also some solar panel testing, currently about 25 kilowatts, soon to be upgraded to 50. And very soon, an enormous battery. Yeah, so lots of stuff happens here, and this is my little mud map for keeping track of it. So this is where my microgrid journey started, and I call it the accidental microgrid because we didn't plan it from the inception, which is a shame, but we managed. It started off with just one Selectronic SP Pro, and those from an international audience might not have heard of this great Australian company, Selectronic, 60 years old. I think last year was their 60th birthday. They've been making sine wave inverters for nearly half of that. So this is their super tough SP Pro. Now we started with just one 5 kilowatt SP Pro, and it was provided by Selectronic for training. They then added 2 more. And so we had 3 SP Pros, giving us what we thought was an enormous 15 kilowatts of AC power, continuous, 30 kilowatts for peak periods of up to 30 minutes, and in a 3-phase configuration. So that was really cool. Behind me is the latest batch of Power Plus Energy batteries too, which came a bit later. We started off with an Occult, rather small battery system. And because I now had a 3-phase system in the lab, I thought, well, why don't I kind of extend it out to the nearest house to my lab, which is, funnily enough, my house. And my house had a small system on it. So that's the birth of the microgrid. But since I'm in this room, I'll just show you how it's growing. Selectronic added another 3. So we now have 6 SP Pros. That gives us Well, initially it was 5 kilowatts, and then Selectronic upgraded them to 7.5s. So 7.5s, that's 45 kilowatts of continuous AC power with a double that for 30 minutes for peak. Now, these are battery inverters. That means they don't have a PV input directly. They're AC coupled to solar, and we'll look at that next. But going back in time, when we only had just the three, we also really needed backup. When I say backup of the microgrid was a very old diesel generator. This is a bit scary. Let's go and check it out. So this is what we call our old diesel generator room. It's pretty horrible actually in here. Years of diesel oil leaks and fumes and whatever. And what we had here, which sort of came with the property when I moved in here over 25 years ago, was a old 3-phase Lister generator. I think it's a 12 kilowatt or 10 kilowatt unit, and it's 3-phase. Now you might think, oh, Glenn, that's really good. But actually it was used to run 3 homes. And without forming a microgrid, it was just their backup system for 3 individual systems. Now, one of the problems with doing that is that you are going to have 3 different single-phase loads on a 3-phase generator is a very bad idea. It's called unbalanced load. And what it causes is in a star configuration, that means there's 3 single-phase reference to a common neutral in the middle. So it's 4 wires, basically, 3 actives and a neutral. As the load varies across the 3 phases unequally, the neutral point moves around. And as you load up one phase, the others start to go higher. And it's really a mess. So it meant that many of the homes that were connected, or those 3 homes connected to this 3-phase generator, got very poor power quality and also could barely charge because it was only 10 kilowatts. Divide that by 3, that's 3.3, allow for a power factor of about 0.8. They're only charging at about 2 and a bit kilowatts each. And even then, because of an unbalanced load, even less than that. So it was a very poor design. So we changed the design, got rid of this, hence it's been decommissioned, and went for a grid forming system, as I've just shown you, with a 3-phase inverter as, a 3-phase generator feeding the source input of that grid forming system. Yeah, so out the back of the woodshed, we built a dedicated new generator shed. And you might think, gee, Glenn, isn't renewable energy the way to go? Why have you got a diesel generator? To be honest, it gives you the ultimate reliability, and that's something important. Hence the title for this show, Microgrids for Preppers. So why would someone, as I described as a prepper, want to have a diesel generator as a backup to a renewable energy system? Well, actually, it is about reliability. Sometimes weather is poor. In fact, here at Mount Tulibawong, we can go 3 weeks sometimes with really terrible weather in the middle of winter, and our solar input's just not enough to keep up. So this kind of keeps us going through those dark times. Less and less used these days because we keep adding more and more renewables and bigger batteries, which gives us more days of autonomy. But it's also reliable from another point of view. If your main grid forming system were to fail, you can always just turn on the generator, and in the case of Selectronic SP Pros, they go automatically into pass-through mode. That means they pass the source from the generator straight through to the loads. So it means you've got really 2 grid forming systems, one pure generator, one generator plus inverter, and most of the time just the 3-phase inverter system. So there you go. It's a 22 kVA 3-phase generator. A little bit small, considering that we've got 45 kilowatts inverter power. We probably need more like a 60 kVA generator, but the system grew and the generator didn't grow with it. Anyway, let's go and check out how we get renewable energy into that microgrid system. The renewable energy input to the microgrid grid forming system is via multiple sources. That's one of the reasons it's called a microgrid. But what I would call our prime mover for solar generation are these 4 inverters here. So these are 4 Select Sun 20 kilowatt 3-phase solar only inverters. They are connected to, in about 220 metres from here, to 2 tracking arrays, 2 single access trackers in a paddock. And there's about 76 kilowatts of solar on those 2 single access trackers, and 4 strings come back to these 4 20 kilowatt inverters. Now, what's special about these is that they are controlled by the electronic power chain. When I say controlled, their generation can be ramped up and down using communication. So there's basically a data cable from the what's called the manager on the power chain, one of the 6 inverters, and it goes to each of these in daisy chain configuration. What it does then is tell them exactly how much power it needs from whatever is the maximum that's available. Now you might wonder, well, don't you always want the maximum? Well, no, you don't. When the microgrid battery system's full, you actually have to curtail generation. And that's one of the challenges with a microgrid, is how do you control generation when you can't spill it to the grid? Yeah, there's no grid here, so we can't send excess to the grid, so we have to ramp down the inverters. Now, these are ramped down very, very fast. We're talking like 5 milliseconds control, so that's really great. It means when there's a cloud edge effect, so the cloud pops out from behind the sun pops out from behind a cloud, you instantaneously get a burst of power, and these inverters can be ramped down not to overload the microgrid system. But we've got way more solar than just the microgrid directly connected solar farm. We've got all the client systems, and this is where the word microgrid really makes sense. So let's go and check out one of the clients. So behind me is one of the 7 homes here in what we call Wombat Hollow Cluster at the Murumura Co-op. And Murumura Co-op is where I've lived for the last 25 years, I'm thinking. It seems like a long time. I guess it is. And there is about 30 homes here, and they're divided into 6 clusters, separated over about a 2-kilometre distance. And this cluster has 7 homes in it. And progressively, we connected more of these homes to the nascent microgrid. Now, when I say connected, by AC cable, so we ran underground cables between the grid forming system, the main switchboard, and individual dwellings here. Now, we run predominantly 3-phase because it's better for distribution, and this is a 3-phase 10 kilowatt Solar X inverter with 27.6 kilowatts of batteries. And this is a hybrid inverter, the type that you would use typically on grid. Now, that's one of the things about a microgrid. It's effectively a grid substitute. So this home here sees the microgrid just as it sees a utility grid. The only difference is that it has to be controlled by the microgrid system when there is just too much power. I mean, I sometimes describe our microgrid as a mini NEM, National Electricity Market, for those who don't know what's called in Australia. The NEM suffers from too much rooftop solar every day, just basically. And so many states are introducing dynamic export control. So we have a form of dynamic export control here on our microgrid, and it's very basic and simple and works out of the box. It's not like a clever engineering solution. It's about the built-in features of any inverter compliant with our grid standard. So AS NZS 4777 Part 2 2020 is the latest grid standard. Even the earlier ones had the same features. And the feature I'm referring to is the power frequency response mode. What that means is whenever frequency rises above a set point, which is by default 50.2 hertz, because we're a 50 hertz grid here, and so once the frequency starts to rise, now why does it rise? You ask. It's actually forced up very slightly, deliberately, by the grid forming SP Pro the Selectronic SP Pro manager goes, the batteries are nearly full. We have to slow down the amount of rooftop solar that's pumping into our batteries. So it very gently raises that frequency from 50.2 hertz all the way through to 52 hertz. And there is a linear relationship then in every client inverter system, like the one behind me. It ramps down in the reverse. So as the frequency goes up, the amount of power that it's producing and exporting to the microgrid goes down. And it creates a balance, which is pretty cool. So really, we just installed this like a regular grid-tied hybrid inverter, and it's controlled by frequency. Now, you can have more than one. In fact, like I said, we've got 7 homes here. They've all got their own solar and battery systems, and we've got quite a lot of test systems. So there's over 20 inverters at any one time on this microgrid, all being ramped up and down when there's too much solar. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, I want to show you some of the other features that we've added to our microgrid. Behind me is basically a carport, but it's a solar carport. It's got 10 kilowatts of solar on top, and that 10 kilowatts is connected through to systems in my lab. We use it for testing, so there's 2 5-kilowatt strings there. But underneath it is a SMAPI EVSE, electric vehicle supply equipment, commonly referred to as an EV charger. And that was our first EV charger here at the Smart Energy Lab, because like I said, we have this problem every day, certainly in the summer months. We just have way too much solar. I mean, today, I think at about 9:30, everything was full, 9:30 a.m. So yeah, we have too much solar. So how do you deal with too much solar? Well, you can curtail it, but a better choice is to have some loads that you can soak up that surplus and do something useful. So electric vehicle charging was the obvious one. We started with just one EV here. We've now got, I think, 5 EVs, and many of my guests who come to visit me bring EVs as well and charge here. So this is our EV charging station. Let's go and check it out. So the SMAPI unit here is freestanding, so it's designed for public areas where you would have it usually at the curbside, and you pull up to it to charge. Now, we do have like I said, a way of dealing with that excess solar by charging from cars, but we don't want the cars to charge at nighttime because there's no excess. And so if they're plugged in and it's nighttime, what we do is the SMAPI system can set availability time. So you can say for the summer months, we'll have it available from 8 a.m. in the morning through to 5 p.m. in the evening. And in the winter months, we shorten that availability period. But the SMAPI system also has some smarts. It's got a control box. Let me take you over to it. It has a control box that has some meters, and it monitors using CTs the amount of power flow in the microgrid. And so this is their monitoring device, and it's looking for opportunities to use renewable energy. So you can program a SMAPI system to be a solar first, i.e. adjust the amount of power that's available to the EV charging system based on the amount of surplus renewable energy above what your loads require. But we still have another problem. Sometimes you come home and it's 5 o'clock and you want to charge. So we've got an off-grid charging system. Now, when I say off-grid, it'll work independently of the microgrid. So just behind me here is the Solentech. It's a 20 kilowatt 3-phase hybrid inverter with 2 stacks of Pylontech Force H1 batteries. So we've got here about I think 20 plus kilowatt hours of storage and a 20 kilowatt 3-phase hybrid inverter. And it can use the energy stored in these batteries to charge vehicles at night time without depleting the main microgrid system. It's pretty impressive, the Solentech hybrids. I mean, this is actually their little one, the 20 kilowatt. 2 really big ones, the 50 kilowatts, almost the same size. And they also come with 3 AC ports. Not this one, but certainly they have models with 3 AC ports, which means grid, backup, and generator. So having that third port means for a really high reliability system, it can auto start a generator and bring it online. And there you go. Incidentally, with the Pylontech Force H1s, you can have quite a lot of parallel stacks. So we've got a combiner box up here, and I think we can have 6 on this combiner box, so 6 stacks. So yeah, this could be quite a big system. So charging became a major use of surplus energy, and we were doing some testing for Wallbox, and we installed four Wallbox systems here. This is the Wallbox Copper SB. Wallbox are a smart EV charger, or EVSE. They can communicate via Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Ethernet. They've got a dashboard, which is great, and we've got a range of their products. So that was the Wallbox SB. Then there's more the commercial unit here, which is called the Commander 2. Currently we're having a few little problems with it. I think this one might be needing a replacement. It won't boot up. It has a beautiful screen, which you can't see at the moment. And down here, if I go down here, we've got the Pulsar Plus, and that's probably what I use just almost every day to charge my EV. Now, Pulsar Plus is their little consumer unit. It's they're lower cost and simple, very small, but it has all the features that I like, which is it can do solar first. It can do dynamic load control. That means if the car's drawing plus the loads on the switchboard more than the switchboard's rated for, it can derate the amount going to the car. So you don't have to worry about popping a fuse or a circuit breaker. It'll derate to stay within its maximum. So how many is that? I think we've seen two. There's actually 6 EV SEs in this little area, but we've got more. In fact, we've got some DC chargers. Let's go and check out one more of the homes on the microgrid. So this is my house, and we've had quite a range of systems on the house. The latest is the SIG Energy Sigen Store. Super happy with this unit. It looks just wonderful, but there's way more to it. So yeah, this would be a very popular choice for a home system or even a commercial system, because they're very scalable. I mean, I've seen these units paralleled up to 3 megawatt hours of storage and 1.5 megawatts of AC power, just with 60 of these all in one shed. But we only got one of them. So what we have here is a stack of 4 8 kilowatt hour battery modules. That gives us 32 kilowatt hours of storage, a 10 kilowatt 3-phase inverter on the top, and the very exciting fast DC charger. There's a 25 kilowatt fast DC charger. That's it there. Yeah. And there's the plug. And if you're not familiar with fast DC charging, basically it means it bypasses the car's inbuilt AC to DC converter, which is often the limiting factor, which is the limiting factor for normal charging at home. But a fast charger basically takes AC from the grid, converts it to DC in the fast charger, and then pumps it in as high voltage DC, 400, even 800 volts, depending on the vehicle, straight into your car battery. And therefore you can get some really high charge rates. So in terms of a microgrid, what have we done here? We've added this home just like we would connect to a utility grid to our 3-phase microgrid. And that allows us to share surplus energy with the house next door. So when our batteries are full, it'll start exporting power onto the microgrid. And if the house next door is in deficit, it can start charging. So that is one of the great benefits of a microgrid. It can spread out the benefits and share the losses. And when I say share the losses, a common generator for backup can share power amongst multiple homes. So this is one of the many labs at the Smart Energy Lab, and this is a test rig for a Victron Multiplus 3-phase system and some amazing supercapacitors. Those rather boring grey boxes are actually supercapacitors. If you heard that chickadee-chick sound, we're just doing some testing on these units and got a few little issues. But what I wanted to tell you about is that there are many systems that can be used for grid forming. I mean, I've got a Cellectronic SP Pro based grid forming system, but any quality off-grid inverter that's designed to be able to receive power on its output, on what we call the load output, and therefore it's bidirectional on its load output, like these Victron Multipluses, can be used to receive AC power from other systems. So even though we've got one brain, the microgrid system, it could have been a Victron-based one, the clients, which are the homes, they are all able to export power back to this unit and charge its, in this case, supercapacitors. So there you go. So one of the things I love about a microgrid is the ability to share energy, the level of resilience that it gives you. So for instance, if the home system were to fail, we've got a microgrid backup. If the microgrid system were to fail, we've got a generator backup. We actually have a lot of redundancy built into the system. But the last thing in terms of redundancy I want to mention is with an AC coupled system, it means that the solar inverters send their power via AC to the grid forming inverters, which in this case are the SP Pros. If the SP Pros turn off, we've got no grid, and the AC coupled solar inverters will not synchronize because there's nothing to synchronize with, and so they can't charge it. And that's called a black start event. Now, one of the solutions, and I'd suggest one of the ways to remedy that potential problem, is to have some DC charging ability for your microgrid system. What we got here is the AERL MPPT. AERL, great Australian company, founded in like 1983, I think it was, by Stuart Watkinson. In fact, the inventor of the MPPT. Yep, it's an Australian invention. The stump jump plough, the humidity crib, and MPPTs. We're an amazing country. So it's got a small array. I think it's got about 2 kilowatts of PV on it, and it can directly charge the microgrid batteries down the back here. That means that if something were to happen that we fully discharged over night time, the microgrid and these inverters shut down because the generator didn't start. And I often say generators have got about 10 reasons why they don't want to start. Low fuel, faulty battery, lack of maintenance, flat battery, just cranky old thing, lots of reasons. Then this would not recharge the next day. But the DC coupled solar from the AERL doesn't care whether there's a grid or not. It's just going to charge those microgrid batteries in behind me here, and therefore the voltage will recover. The SP Pros will see a usable voltage turn back on, and we're back in action. So that's so cool. Anyway, that kind of ends my little tour, or very short tour, of our microgrid. Thanks for watching. Hey, so what do you reckon? Do you enjoy the little walk and talk tour? Let me know in the comments. So since I did a walk and talk, I'm going to now do a show and tell of how it was all put together on a sort of just a simple single line diagram. So let me just get that ready. Okay, and where's my overheads there? That's it. Okay. So once again, my little drawings, and this is kind of a very, very simplified version of our microgrid. So let me start on the left-hand side here. So there's that 22 kVA diesel generator for ultimate backup. I'm pleased to say we hardly ever use it now. It used to be used a lot more when we didn't have so much solar. It ran, I think, a week ago for a few hours, first time in 6 months. So my main concern is making sure it's ready to go. And that's one of the things in terms of resilience. You want to make sure you've got a way of keeping the starter battery charged. So we have a small 12-volt power supply onto that starter battery. Some people put in a dedicated small solar panel just to keep the starter battery alive. And, of course, you still got to do maintenance. Things like oil changes, fuel filters, etc. You got to have a schedule for those. So don't just think, I hardly ever use it. Well, fuel can go bad. In fact, diesel fuel really only has a 6 to 12-month shelf life before, unfortunately, the diesel bug can start to grow in it and make it all gooey and thick, and then it won't pump very well. I just saw a question come in from Day. What is the black start capacity of something like a Cygen stack? Okay, so I'm not really that familiar yet with the Cygen stack. That's their newest product. It's a separate batteries and large inverters up to, I think, 110 or more kilowatts. If they are DC coupled, which I'm pretty sure they are, any DC coupled hybrid inverter generally can do black start. So if the grid fails and there's solar on, they can DC charge the battery. But I don't want to make promises that I don't know about yet, Day. So I'll take that question on notice and run it past SIG Energy. Thanks for that one. So there's our diesel generator. There's our power chain from Selectronic. That's 6 SP Pros. That's effectively what I call the grid-forming inverter system. They create the stable grid to which all of this connects, all of this. And I've shown it with the little 3 dashed lines. That means 3-phase because it's a 3-phase microgrid. But some of the users, like this little cabin here, is single phase. Doesn't matter. You can draw off on one phase. But you do want to take or keep in mind phase balancing. So you don't want to start putting all the single phase loads on L1. You want to spread them around and consider what are coincidental loads. So if there's anything that's scheduled at the same time, try and spread that across the phases as much as possible. We've got my labs and workshops. There's about 5 of those. We've got 4 controlled hot water services, and those are in different homes, and they are using something called the Catch Solar Relay, now called the Catch Control. And the Catch Control has lots of features. In fact, I'm going to do a video on this amazing little device from Catch Power, another great Australian company, and that can respond to frequency change and turn on or turn off hot water services. We've got some AC coupled batteries. No solar at all, just a battery and an inverter, and those can charge and discharge into that microgrid. We've got 7 EVSEs, and those are scheduled so they can be controlled by time, and some of them are solar only, or solar first, I should say. In the lab, we've got a whole bunch of test systems, about 20 inverter battery systems, plus some test arrays that we shuffle around them. We've only got about 5 test arrays, so we can't have them all powered up at the same time. The solar farm, that's the big system you saw with the 4 Select Sun inverters. It's 4 20 kilowatt Select Suns, with the 2 trackers, the 2 single axis trackers out in the paddock, which apparently we're about to upgrade to 6 of them. So we're going to have a lot of trackers out there soon. And there's the solar panel testing site. This is by a company called P-Vision from China, who do testing in different countries around the world. I think at the moment it's Italy, Thailand, China, Sydney, and here. Woohoo! And so, we've got to soak up some of that energy for testing. And then down the bottom here, we've got the 7 homes. I've just drawn a few of them. They all have their own solar and battery system. So this is part of that fundamental resilience that's built into the design. That means that if the microgrid is turned off for some reason, and we do that sometimes when we're doing some upgrades on the system, these homes don't lose power to their home. They just lose access to the microgrid because they've got their own independent systems. And there's even some which are just solar only. So there's the one here. We have a large community building called the Lodge, and it's sleeps like 20 people. And there's even a tiny house connected to our microgrid, and it's a one-way connection. It has its own solar and battery, so it is somewhat independent, but whenever that's not enough, it can draw from the microgrid. And there's finally the Black Start system. So there's a MPPT, a maximum power point tracking device, directly connected to with a small array, I think about 2 kilowatts, to the main microgrid battery. And that's the Black Start protection. Cool. All right, I saw a question come in, and that was from Romy. Hi, DJ Glenn. Thank you. The ratio of the grid-forming SE Pros, Selectronic Pros, or SP Pros, sorry, to grid following seems very high. Isn't there a 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 ratio maximum? Okay, Romy, well spotted. Being a bit of a test facility, we like to see if we can break things. And I should point out that Selectronic actually, the grid forming system here is one of their test sites. So it's a beta test site. So they can play around with it, put beta firmware on there. We're very happy for them to do that because they provided the equipment. Thank you very much, Selectronic. And we've gone way over the 1-to-1 or even the 2-to-1 ratio. I think we're around about the 4-to-1 ratio of solar power to inverter power, where solar power is in the amount of generation versus the amount that the SP Pro can absorb. Now, how can that be? It's because we've got the largest generator, which is the 4 20 kilowatt Select Suns controlled via Modbus by the SP Pros themselves. That means it can ramp very, very fast, like I said, 5 milliseconds down that that generation source. So that can take off, nearly 80 kilowatts in an instant and stop reverse power when the batteries are full. The frequency-controlled rest of the microgrid is still the problem. It's more like, 30, 40, 50, even 100 millisecond response time. So it's a bit slower in ramping down. And I think we're pretty close to the maximum at the moment. We did have some issues, because we test stuff here, and Power Plus Energy had one of their new models of batteries here, discovered that their sensitivity to momentary spikes was a bit too sensitive. Like I say, this was their test units. They've got monitoring on every cell in the pack here. It's amazing. So they just adjusted the sensitivity to momentary spikes to stop the batteries from shutting down. So there you go. You've got to consider all those elements. But ultimately, and I have to say this, it's the manufacturer's recommendation. So if they say the maximum ratio is 1-to-1, that means 10 kilowatts of solar and 10 kilowatts of grid forming. That's the rule. So stick with that, and you'll be in a safe realm. But yeah, like I said, we do some weird things here. The other thing that really helps us too is having those frequency-controlled loads that can kick in really quickly. We've got a 9 kilowatt 3-phase water heater here, for instance, that does proportional frequency response. So it ramps up and down. It's 9 kilowatts of load, and it helps dampen any change. It works pretty much instantaneously as well. So that's a very good feature. So I'd suggest you want to have quite a lot of controlled loads to keep everything smooth. I mean, you could say this is the firming aspect of a microgrid, using the terminology that the NEM uses, that just kind of keeps everything fairly stable. So thanks very much, Romy, for that question. Okay, where are we up to? Oh yeah, I said I would talk a little bit about both islanded microgrids and island and grid-connected microgrids. So up until now, we've been talking about my off-grid microgrid, but now we're starting to see grid-connected microgrids. In fact, some of the utilities in Australia, like AusNet and others, are experimenting with them, where a whole street from the transformer downwards is effectively islandable with its own microgrid. And there's some distinct advantages there, particularly in rural areas where there is quite extended feeders from a central supply, and the zone substation might be tens of kilometres away, and those power lines can come down in a storm, and suddenly a whole town loses power. So now we're looking at having ability for a town to stay on board, stay on power, even when the main feeder goes down. And so that's a grid-connected microgrid. It also means that they can do some clever things, certainly if they have battery storage, with the economics of that system. So having a battery upstream of the meter, so it's basically on the utility side of the meter. It can do some optimization of the cost of electricity. But being on the downstream side, behind the meter, as it's often called, is a lot easier to do if you own the assets. And that generally means you need to be a single installation. Doing a whole town, you're definitely in the utility space. So there you go. Microgrids really coming back. Now, coming back, because we started off with microgrids and then formed the NEM in Australia. Here where I live in the Yarra Valley used to have its own hydro microgrid before the State Electricity Commission rolled out power lines out to the Yarra Valley. So we're kind of going back to the future, bringing resilience and redundancy back into communities and even into suburban streets. There are some power companies now putting pole top power systems. So they're putting like an upper power pole near the transformer, a 50, 100, 200 kilowatt inverter with battery storage on the power pole. Why? Well, they can play with the energy costs a bit, but it's also about resilience. If a possum falls across the lines on the high voltage, they can keep supplying for a short period of time the downstream community until they get to those high voltage lines and fix them. So yeah, definitely some advantages. Cool. You're a quiet bunch today. Not a lot of questions. I really enjoy questions, but I guess you've been watching and listening. Now, we're coming up to the end of the show, and I just want to make sure I've covered off everything. Yes. So my next Toolbox Tech Talk is, again, next Sunday, the 2nd of February at 1 p.m. But the following one, I'm going to be in South Africa, so I won't be doing a Toolbox Tech Talk. And I'm actually doing a technical tour in South Africa with Harold's, one of the biggest distributors or retailers of electrical goods in South Africa. And it's going to be very interesting because South Africa shares a lot of commonality with Australia when it comes to products, but also more challenges in terms of reliability of their grid. And so backup systems are becoming a really big part of certainly in the commercial space and in the residential space in South Africa. So, yeah, I'm going to be talking and touring between Johannesburg and Cape Town. Really excited. Never been there before. So, thanks everyone for watching. And, like I say, I'll be back next Sunday. Send me your questions by my email. I'll put it in the chat. Just scroll back if you missed it. And I'll make sure that I cover them in another Toolbox Tech Talk. So, we're out. See ya.
Every word that comes out is a lie. Make it look like it's so ice. You won't make it to the finish line. Now if you gotta know the truth, was gonna let you